Good afternoon and welcome to the Swift Student Mentorship Challenge. We've got a lot of people in here actually today. We've got people registered all the way from South Africa to Australia and a lot, of course, in Southeast Asia, where I am currently situated. So those of you who don't know me, my name is Daniel Budd. I'm currently teaching at Hong Kong International School, but also do a lot of presentations for Apple as an Apple Distinguished Educator, Apple Professional Learning Specialist, and a couple of other communities that I'm involved with. I suppose what this is really about, this is our fourth year running this webinar with the opportunity to try and help students submit and be successful for Apple's Swift Student Challenge. So that's really what we're here. We're here to try and build this community further. We're trying to show you, first of all, the application process, but also how you can be successful and how you can build that community and network a little bit within our own area and our little part of the world. So I'm going to try and record this for some of the people who weren't able to make it, but also so we can archive this and share some of the stories to a bit of a wider audience who couldn't make it during our unique time zone. So you'll notice all of your cameras are currently turned off apart from our presenters and also your microphones. But as we're going through, please make sure that you do ask any questions in the chat. We have James Abella here from Garden International School in Kuala Lumpur. He's going to be our MC for the day and also help to surface any questions and answer any questions, technical or otherwise, as we go through. So whilst everyone can't see the questions, this is public, so we've tried to make sure that students are protected through this presentation. So there's limited functionality, but we want to make sure that everyone has their voice heard and we do answer those questions as we go through. And of course, user reactions, if there's anything you like, dislike, there's a way for us to get feedback. It's quite difficult when we're presenting within a Zoom sense. I can't see any facial expressions and neither can the presenters, so we can't react as you're going. So emojis will help us do that as we're going along. So we've got a pretty jam-packed agenda for this hour and a half, so I'm going to kick things off. I'm then going to speak about the application process. Josiah is going to talk about his experience and his story. Then we're going to talk about how we can develop your ideas further, and Jia Chen is going to share his presentation. And then we're going to strengthen the story a little bit more and talk about the technologies that you could use. And Rexon and Samion are going to share their stories before we move on to the next steps. So it's a pretty jam-packed agenda. We're really excited to all be here and share our stories with you in this format. So all of the links which we're going to share in the chat are actually going to be available within a Padlet for you all to have. I've also included screenshots from a lot of the slides during this keynote deck. So you'll have access to those at a high resolution as well if you want to take them away either as a teacher or as a student and you want to build that up. So what is WWDC, or affectionately known as WWDC? Well, the Worldwide Developers Conference, as we all sort of know, is the start of when we get our new software cycles for all of our lovely Apple devices. I like to call it Christmas for software developers because essentially when we get all the fun toys that we get to play with over the next year. We've got all the new APIs, all the new libraries, all the new cool technology that we know is going to really start to impact our world. But what some people don't know is there's also an opportunity for all the people who work within Swift, who work as app developers, who work for companies who build applications. They all descend on Silicon Valley to Apple Park, and they get to speak to all of the engineers, all of the product designers, all of the people who create these technologies and the software and the operating systems that we use daily are all present at this one conference where we get to ask them the questions. So if you're a big fan of GarageBand, there's an opportunity for you to meet the team who built GarageBand, who invented the product which you love so much. So I was actually lucky enough when I went in 2016 to meet Tim Cook in person, but also I was there when we launched the Swift Playgrounds app for the very first time. And the school that I was currently working at, Christchurch Grammar School, was also featured. So I was actually able to meet the engineers and the team who actually built this application. They were able to give me insights into how to reverse engineer some of the playgrounds which were first available, so I could actually build my own application. So at the time, this came at a pretty important time. We were actually transitioning from a MacBook program to an iPad program within our school. And I wanted to try and deliver the same experience that the students had on their MacBooks within the iPad, within Swift Playgrounds. So when I first started coding, I started learning with Python Turtle. And this is a sort of rendition from Seymour Papert. He's a sort of forefather of education. He came up with this turtle device where when you give instructions, it moves forward or moves backwards or left or right as we start to code. And we've seen different versions of this, of course, with Python Turtle. So you can see Sierpinski's triangle. That annoying cat, which you probably annoyed your teachers with that little meow. Drawing things with the pen tool. Of course, then we had these Sphero devices where you can give them instructions and they can do a similar sort of thing. So you can see the inspiration there between Sphero and Seymour Papert's Turtle. So I was pretty excited when Swift Playgrounds came out, and as I mentioned, I reverse engineered some of the playgrounds which the Apple team had created in order to deliver that same experience that I loved when I was learning to code for my students within Swift Playgrounds. So I actually created a Geometry with Swift Playgrounds course. It's probably why I'm speaking to you now today. It's about 100,000 subscribers now, which is pretty exciting. And it's freely available still within Swift Playgrounds. But what I really loved is I could develop a structured course to deliver that same experience for students. They could build up their code into more complex shapes. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on my story, but this is my sort of journey with Swift Playgrounds and also the Worldwide Developers Conference. And it's what led me towards doing more speaking engagements and also sort of shaped my career in terms of now working in Hong Kong from once working in Australia. Through this application, I was able to integrate it into maths courses. So in a subject in the beginning where computer science wasn't particularly popular, but we had a lot of maths classes. So we were able to integrate and create a new course where students weren't talking about coding, they were talking about mathematics, but they actually applied the coding to their problems in order to visualize what they were trying to create. And this is essentially what our students are going to do for us today. We've got Jesaiah from Australia, we've got Rexon and Samion from here in Hong Kong, and we've got Jia Chen from Singapore. So they're all past winners, and they're going to share their stories for you about their interactions with Swift, how they were introduced to Swift, and also their experience with first WWDC, but also the Swift Student Challenge. As I mentioned in the beginning, what we're trying to do here is to build a community, and the first steps for that is you need to make sure that you have a developer Apple ID. So with your Apple ID, you just need to go to developer.apple.com and register your account to create a free account. This will allow you to build applications to your own device, but it also gives you access to, first of all, the forum, the developer forum. And in here, you'll find a community of developers. Again, the product managers are in here soliciting feedback on their applications and helping people out with support. But this is a place where you can ask all the questions you need to about the applications, about the technology, and get support from people who use it. The other application that you need to download is the developer app. So whether you go to the Worldwide Developer Conference in person or you want to look at some of the archived sessions and learn about some of the technologies, this is the app that you need to download. So it's available on iOS, tvOS, etc. This is where you can see all of the past sessions, as I mentioned, but also if you were there in person, it's where you receive the schedule for the day, book in which sessions you want to go see, etc. So it's a very important app, whether you win the competition or not, to follow up and learn about the technology. So I encourage you all to get signed up quickly and explore that. So the first thing we want to do, and this is probably the most important part, is we want to explore the application process. So it's not very complicated at all. In fact, it's quite simple. But everything is based around building a Swift Playgrounds application. Okay, and that comes in different shapes and forms. They could be an iPad app, it could be a phone app, an iOS app. But essentially what we want to do is to create an application and have a few written prompts, and that's what your application is. You can see a couple of past projects here in the background. And in the chat, James Bell has actually shared a link to the website which has a lot of the details, and I'm going to step through for you now. So the website has been thoroughly redesigned for this year. The first thing you'll notice is this beautiful white stark colouring. But it's also approached a lot earlier this year. Previously we used to get announcement basically 3 weeks before the competition, which made it very difficult for people to organise transportation and excuses for getting out of school, etc. But this year it's going to be announced a lot earlier. So it's going to be announced at the beginning of February. And then you're going to have 3 weeks to build your application. But of course you can start now because we're helping you out and letting you know what's going to be expected. We also have this new challenge where we have these distinguished winners, which I'm going to speak about in the future. So we have 350 winners who are recognized as winners for the challenge. And then we have another 50 out of that 350, which will be invited to Cupertino in Silicon Valley. And we'll have a different kind of experience, which we're going to talk about a little bit in the future. If you scroll down a little bit, you'll also see there is some feature of different developers who have won in the past, and one of them is Jia Chen, who's going to speak to you a little bit more later on. So he's featured in a couple of places on the Swift Student Challenge website, but also more recently in the App Store as well. He's been featured as a featured developer at the moment. So I'll leave Jia Chen to explain that a little bit more. But through this website, you can also see some other inspiration, get some ideas of some of the work that other developers have been working on who are sort of your age as well. Jia Chen's a little bit older now, but he was your age, a high school student when he first started. And now he's in university. So he's going to share a little bit more about his story, and some of the others will share their stories also. But getting back to the distinguished educators, as I mentioned, there will be a few outstanding submissions. So what sets out these 50? So, of course, they have that demonstrated excellence of innovation, which, of course, all the winners will have. There's a certain level of creativity. But where it sticks is the level of social impact and inclusivity. So ensuring that your application not only impacts you, but impacts a bit of a wider community. And that could be a personal community. It could be your own school. It could be people with a certain disability or certain people within a certain ethnic group. But it's a bit more of a wide range. So that's what we're going to work with you tonight, is a little bit on developing your story, developing your ideas into something a bit more meaningful and something a little bit more than just you and a little bit more than just your passions. So there's a couple of criteria for when you're applying. Of course, you need to be at least 13 years of age, or if there's anyone from here from the European Union, you must be 16 years of age. This is for privacy, of course. You must have a developer account, as I mentioned, and that's going to be very difficult for you to apply if you do not, so that's an essential one. You must be enrolled in some sort of schooling. So that could be homeschooling, of course, or an accredited academic institution. In Australia, where I'm from, we also have technical colleges like TAFE. This could also be counted as a STEM organisation or some sort of educational curriculum where you're also applicable. And we also have the Apple Developer Academy as well. So high school students, etc., who have just graduated are also perfectly fine. We're just trying to make sure that this is a challenge for students. But this also means that your teachers are also eligible. So if you have a teacher, perhaps they're just beginning with app development, but you should also encourage them to share their story and talk about how they're starting to learn to develop Swift applications, or teach you guys how to develop applications and give you opportunities to learn how to build them. So any teacher, perhaps who may be studying for their master's or their PhD or some sort of higher education, they can also be eligible for this as well. So there's no upper age limit either. And then there are some technical requirements, of course, for building your application. So you need to use the Swift Playgrounds app package. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in the future. But essentially, you can build this within Xcode, or you can build it within the Swift Playgrounds app as well. So you don't need to go out and buy an iPad if you don't have one. You can do a lot of your testing within the Xcode. Your application is not able to access the internet. So remember, when these judges are running them, they will not have an internet connection. It's for security, of course. When we're sending bits of code around, we want to make sure that it is safe. So you need to make sure it does not access external connections. When you zip it up, it needs to be 25 megabytes, which means your application should be 24 megabytes. So make sure it's smaller than it needs to be so that you're not going to run into any troubles. You can modify some templates that have been created by Apple or by someone else to make them your own, as long as you reference them. And you can, of course, use images and sounds and things that are in public domain. But of course, it's always fantastic to create your own as well. Last of all, you've got to make sure that the application, of course, is using the correct versions. And this is an English-speaking competition. So while some of your applications may encourage people to learn a different language or may have elements of other language, your application should all be in English, and the majority of the instructions should all be in English as well, because that's the language the judges will speak. So basically, to summarize what you need to know, so the prerequisites are: you must be 13, you must have a registered Apple ID account, you must be enrolled in some sort of school or university, and the application must be in English. For the technical specifications, you must use the Swift Playgrounds app. It must be compressed to a certain size, 25 megabytes. You can use templates. It can't access the internet. The main majority of the instructions must be in English also, as well as your application. Of course, you must use the correct version as specified within the website. And then when you go to submit, you've got to use your Apple developer account, because that's the only way you're going to be able to log in. You must have some sort of demonstrated proof of enrollment, so some sort of transcript or something like that. Generally, an age is a good example of that as well. If you're 14 years old, you should be enrolled in some sort of education, so that's perfectly fine. You need to upload your project, and then there's this optional information. Now, this optional information, I would say, is not optional. Well, it's optional, as James said in the chat. It's optional if you don't want to win. But essentially, this is where you get to tell your story. This is where you get to talk about why this is important to you, why you're a developer, why do you want to build anything. This is where you get to share your story. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that as we progress through as well. So a little bit more of a deeper dive into the application. This is from a previous year. We don't have access to this yet. This is all sort of secret squirrel business until it finally gets announced. Even for Apple employees, they don't know about this until it's actually announced. So on the first page, you'll see your particulars, where you talk about what your age is, your details, all that kind of stuff, which is important. So how many years you've been learning to code, all that kind of thing. From there, you upload your application. Of course, it will reject it if the size is too big. You talk about the content you've used, tell about the technologies you've used. This just sort of highlights everything that's within your application in a summary. From there, you start to talk about your passion. Talk about beyond WWDC. What do you want to share? Why are you enthusiastic about computer science? This is where you get to let them know. Do you have any other apps on the App Store? This isn't essential. Of course, it can help. But they just want to see your passion. They want to see that, your progress, your story, the way you developed, your journey within app development. And then we've got this very, very important section. The size. So you're all growing as a part of the Swift Playgrounds process for this competition. The Swift Student Challenge. You get swag. Swag is very sought after within the Swift developer community. You can't buy Swift t-shirts. I'm sure you can buy some rip-offs off Taobao or something, but the authentic stuff is very hard to get. I've still got my 2016 jacket. I advise everyone to get maybe a size bigger because you will want to keep wearing this. It's a pretty cool thing. Well, I think it is, in a nerdy kind of way. And then once you've gone through that and you put your address and all those kind of things in, the next thing you need to do is to tell your story. So again, this is that optional part where I say it's actually essential. This is where you get to tell the judges about your background, about your story, about your struggles of becoming a developer, all those hardships, when your mum refused to buy you a Mac laptop and she'd only give you a Windows 1 and you cried for a week. They're the kind of things you need to talk about. How you took a paper round out or worked at the local deli so you could save up enough money to buy your device to build the application that was going to change the world, right? Apple is a consumer electronics company and they really value stories and they want to hear your story. They want to hear about you. This is your opportunity to do that. And we're going to kick off first with Jesaiah's story. So Jesaiah is from Australia. Jesaiah is very passionate about app development. He was actually a part of this community last time as a participant, listening on, asking lots of questions. And now I've brought him back in to share his story. without further ado, I'm going to pass this over to Jesaiah and allow him to share his story.
Awesome. Thanks, Daniel. I've just sent another Discord server specifically for Swift Student Challenge people that will come through in the chat pretty soon. So if you want to join that, go ahead. So I am Josiah. I'm 16 years old and I love playing the saxophone. I'm from Australia. I started a band with a bunch of my school friends and we go busking a lot in the city and it's lots of fun. But saxophones are heavy and I found myself constantly carrying it around the city and on public transport as well. So it got me thinking, my phone's not very heavy, my saxophone is. What if there was an app that let you play the saxophone on your phone? I searched and searched the App Store, but I couldn't find one. So this was the light bulb moment. I had no idea how to code. I didn't even know how to design, but I set out to make an app that lets you learn how to play the saxophone. So I spent many hours learning how to code and write interfaces in Swift with Swift UI. And these are some of the great resources I use. So if you want to take a quick screenshot of these, feel welcome. So I completed my app's first version and I decided to enter the Swift Student Challenge. After lots and lots of coding, it was ready for submission. I clicked enter and then a few weeks later, I saw this pop up. I just got out of bed. I saw this pop up on my phone and it's like Swift Student Challenge. I click it. I'm so excited. I enter my details and it says I was not a winner. It was really disheartening. It made me consider whether this idea was even worth it. Were my skills what let me down? Was coding really the thing for me? But I decided I wasn't going to stop trying. I redesigned everything from the way it looked to basically every single line of code. And I think this is where you learn the most in your journey, especially if you fail the first time. It's not about coding and making apps, but the perseverance to continue, even if something doesn't go right the first time. So coding teaches you so much more than just how to make an app. 1 year later, it's 2023, and the time comes to enter the competition again. I've worked all holidays on my submission, and it was ready to go. Then the results came in. I hopped out of bed again and see the email on my phone. Now, before I clicked it, I remember thinking to myself, regardless of what this says, I'd achieved what I set out for. I built an app that lets anyone learn how to play the saxophone, and it's one that people would want to use. And I was accepted as a winner. A few days later, I got a call from Apple, California. They wanted me, along with 10 other students from all around the world, to present their apps to someone at Apple. They didn't tell us who. For weeks, we were prepping our slides and going on these rehearsals to make sure we were going to say everything right. So because of American time, it was like 4:50 in the morning, very early start. And we all logged on. We still didn't know who we were going to talk to. And suddenly they turned the camera on. It was Tim. We got to each present our apps to him and talk about what he thought. He thought of my one as democratizing music, letting anyone learn how to play an instrument. After the call, all the students kept in touch as well, and I made some really good friends. I hope this inspires you to enter this Swift Student Challenge this year, even if you don't win, and then to enter again. If you want to stay in touch, here are my socials. My LinkedIn is just my name, and same with my Twitter.
Thanks very much, Josiah. So I think you can all. So we're going to have some questions at the end of the session. So we're gonna sort of power through a little bit to make sure we get the core information out. But just keep any questions you have into the chat. James will write them down, and as we get through, we'll have an opportunity for all of us to ask questions and sort of run through there. But you can see kind of where Josiah has really brought his passion for music into his app development. And also the real sort of humble approach, which I really appreciate, Josiah, in how you really thought that you didn't have the skills to develop what you want. And that's the way that I learned to code, was through through building different projects, through thinking about things that I wanted to build, and then starting to tackle them, one by one, section by section, until I figured out exactly what I wanted to do. So I suppose what the main messaging from this story is, you got to focus on something. You got to make something that's personal to you. There's a lot of different apps out there. The idea really doesn't have to be unique, right? There are other music apps in the App Store, right? We've got GarageBand. We've got other apps out there. But what made this interesting is how personal it was, and the slight differences that Jesaiah put in as a musician. We're really passionate about ensuring that what we do is something which matters. So you saw in the distinguished winners that you can have some sort of something personal to you, but you could also have something which is a little bit more community oriented, or a little bit more inclusive. So thinking about social injustices, thinking about community service, perhaps that you've got a personal story about a disability or accessibility, environmental sustainability. And this isn't about, what's the word for it? Virtue. Anyway, trying to say that you're doing something for a good cause, but not actually doing anything. It's not about that. This is about you doing something personal. If you love dogs, if you love your dog and you made an app about your dog, that's still personal to you. That still matters, right? You don't have to do something that's going to impact the entire world. It could impact your world. It could impact your school. It could impact your community. But to give you an idea, the United Nations Sustainability Goals are a good place for you to start. They're a good place for you to think about this sustainability and to think about some different areas that you could focus on. And if you're working within the IB curriculum, a lot of international students in here, you should be familiar with these goals. Another good way to identify problems is to use Stanford's design thinking. So this is a really nice framework for you to start to think about. What are the things you see around yourself? What are the things you feel? What are the things you think? And really try to identify and define what these problems are. Once you've identified the problem, you can start to ideate and think about, what is the core problem? What are you trying to solve? What do you want to try and build? So then you can start to prototype and test and build out your problem. So this is a framework that you can use to start to build out your ideas. It's called Stanford's design thinking. There's lots of videos online about this. Your teacher should also be able to help you go in the right direction for this as well.
I mean, but it's not that complicated. It's basically, can you think of somebody who would find this useful? What would they want? And I think if you stick to that, you're going to come up with something good.
Yes, with that, make sure that you do test this application. If your user is a 13-year-old student from Hong Kong, give your app to 13-year-old students in Hong Kong and get them to tell you what they think about it. Okay. Find someone that you're not friends with. Find someone who doesn't like you. Find someone who's not your friend to give you feedback, right? You don't want to sit in an echo chamber of people who think you're awesome. You want to build the best product possible. So even for Jesaiah, if he was to give his app to a non-musician, what would they think about it? Is it something they could get up and running with? So next we're going to hear from Jia Chen. So Jia Chen, I'll give you a second to get your slides up. So Jia Chen is a two-time winner now. So he's going for his third opportunity.
Third and final. You only get three wins.
I think you get four. I think you get four.
Oh,
He's going to test
but I think you test that theory, aren't you?
I'll try to be the next Yuma. Okay. Okay, so anyways, so hi, I'm Jia Chen. So I think Daniel has given quite a bit of, I don't know, he has hyped me up quite a bit, but so I'm, I'm still a student, so I'm in Yan Polytechnic. I'm still a developer, I still develop stuff in my free time. And I do quite a bit of community-based work right now. So, helping out with the iOS development community in Singapore. If you've heard of this thing called iOS Conf SG, so it's a conference run by developers in Singapore. So folks from different organizations like Grab, Dyson, Singapore Power, like we all come together to run this conference. A bunch of people, we fly in a bunch of people like Paul Hudson, some of you might know him. Those who don't know him have copied his code. He's the guy who wrote Hacking with Swift and all of that. So that's a quick intro of myself. So the question is, why am I here? So I use this slide every time because it works for every presentation. In this case, I'm here because, I've won the challenge twice, and, I've always come back to this program every year actually. So I think this is our second or third time doing this together. So yeah, so it's actually quite fun. At the end you see everyone what they've built. There are like public repositories where people upload what they've submitted, and you can take a look and see what everyone has done. So right now I have a bunch of apps on the App Store. So here's just a couple of them. So the first one right in the top corner is Tasks. It was the first app I've ever built. And from then on, I've been, just hacking away, just building different apps to solve different problems of mine. So, the middle one to the left is SST Announcer. It was just this school announcements app because the school had this really weird way of sending out announcements, like through Blogger. I'm not sure if anyone still uses that. So I decided to tap into the RSS feed so that you could see it on your iPhone, and then also run the cron job so you could get push notifications every time the school announced something. So let me just highlight one of my latest apps, Bianco. So so this is a pretty nice photo that I have of it. So basically the entire idea is I worked with Benina, a Swiss embroidery machine company, to build this app such that you can use your Apple Pencil and iPad to just draw, and it translates that drawing into machine embroidered stitches. So you get a physical end product. So it's been really cool just going out to, like, I think the last time we did it was at a museum where we just let the guests, try to draw out Peranakan designs. And then after that, they get to take home something physical and, something actually valuable that they've built themselves. So it's really nice to just watch people like interact with what you've built that way. So, okay. But here's the thing, I'm not actually here to like sell you an embroidery machine. That thing's like 5,000 Singapore dollars. Yeah, I'm not even gonna buy it in myself. But the goal of showing you that is to show you that, my journey has come quite far, but actually I started like many of you. This was me in secondary 1. So that would be about 13 years old, 12, 13 years old. And this was me just starting out, just figuring out what I was doing, trying out. And how did I get from where I was in secondary 1 to where I am today with, a fully functioning app on the App Store with a commercial partner and everything? It's true, just by building projects. Like, there's literally not much else to it than just building things. So, all of the different apps on the App Store. But that's not all of the apps I've built. So beyond that, there's actually hundreds of apps that are on the apps that don't actually make it to the App Store. And you might recognize those icons as those failed projects that, end up sitting in your simulator forever. But in fact, all of those are just different tests. So last I checked on my GitHub profile, I've had over 150 different repositories, and most of them aren't actually, published on the App Store. And most of them are little apps. And it's perfectly fine to just build those little apps. So I swear like later on there's a point about the Switzerland challenge, but like we'll get through this bit. Okay, so some of the examples I have is this app called MacLock. So how it started was basically I just looked at my Mac and went, oh, it's across the room. It's like 20 meters away. I'm not gonna walk there just to lock my Mac. What if I could lock it from my watch? So I created this little watch complication where you just tap on that thing and then it just automatically locks the Mac. It's a really simple automation. I mean, if you break down the process, it is find a way for my watch to communicate with my Mac. That I discovered I could just use Bluetooth. And then after that, now, how do I lock the Mac? And apparently you could use something like AppleScript to press Control, Command, and Q, which is the keyboard shortcut to lock your Mac. Don't actually try it now because you're in the middle of a Zoom call. So yeah. So that's just one example of the apps that I've tried. So another one. So I just had this really random thought one day. Okay, I just sat down and was like, I've seen these cool AR demos where people interact with stuff with their hands. What if we could just like do that but with code and like Swift UI, like a live preview? This was before the Apple Vision Pro, okay? So like I came first. So I built this demo. The demo doesn't actually show it well, and I can't really find the source code. It's probably buried somewhere. So it's such that you just grab an iPad and you just use your hand and you can reach out in front of you and using the built-in vision hand tracking. When you close your hand, it detects that as you picked it up. And then when you open it again, it detects it as you dropped it. So it allows you to drag and drop it. And then there were like little challenges, like try to build a cookie counter or something. And then, it counted your points along the way. So that was a really cool side project that was actually pretty fun to just like pick up and throw things around in AR. It broke half the time, but it was just a nice technical demo. Okay, and here's the last one. So over-engineered arrow keys. So this was actually when I was doing a talk for an event. So they were like, okay, so our clickers can't actually reach that far. We're having the Mac situated like 80, 90 meters behind in the back of a hall. How are you going to control your slides? So, they were like, you're gonna have to memorize the script and then you're gonna have to give us the script and we'll click it for you. And I was like, no, that's even harder. You know what I'll do? I'll just build an app. I'll build an app such that I scan the QR code on my Mac, and then after that, I'll just press the next and previous button, and it'll connect automatically to my Mac. And after that, it'll just press the arrow keys automatically. So a lot of this process is just taking an entire like giant idea that you have and just breaking it down. So for example, in this case, it is breaking it down from I want to like, how do I communicate from a phone to a Mac regardless of distance? Maybe I need a database. Okay, then now how do I click the next button? So maybe when the next button is pressed on the phone, it has to send a message to the database with the timestamp. And when the Mac receives it, what does that have to do? It has to press the corresponding arrow keys. So when you break down the process like that, everything seems so much simpler. It's a lot less intimidating. And that is the point, so after that, I was like, this is actually good enough, I could actually publish it to the App Store. And it is actually available on the App Store right now. In fact, literally this morning, it was part of an App Store story. So I think this might be Southeast Asia specific. So if you go to swiftin.sg/App Store feature, you can take a look at it. So there are a couple of other stories in there as well. So it features Poom, James, and a couple of other folks who have also won the Swift Student Challenge and are sharing the apps that they've built. So when I talk about the process of just learning by building projects, it's really about just trying out ideas and just learning along the way. And it's just about experimenting. A lot of these projects, they never ever see the light of day. In fact, half of them are private repos. Actually, I encourage you to, like, if possible, develop in public, just share the repository and stuff. But so some of them I actually have it open sourced on my profile if you want to take a look. But ultimately, all of this is just about having fun. You can just build a project idea, you can just have fun with the project. You don't have to treat everything like a high stakes game where the stakes are either a trip to California or nothing. You can just treat the Swift Student Challenge as just yet another opportunity to have fun with developing and try to experiment with a new technology. So I guess the overall message here is that it's okay to fail. Even if you get an email from Apple that says that, hey, here's a status on your application and you failed. It's perfectly fine. You've learned something along the way. You've tried out, I guess, technologies you wouldn't have been able to try out before, and that's perfectly fine. And actually, it's normal to fail, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to figure things out and just experiment. So I guess I'll just wrap it up by just saying, app development is a superpower. You can use it to really just develop whatever you want. Beyond just the Swift Student Challenge itself, you can just develop it to just solve your daily problems. If you're annoyed by a small thing, you can try to build an app for it, and you can see what you can do with it. So that's about it from my side. So thanks, and I'll pass it back to Daniel.
I think that's really a very inspiring story. Well done. And I was just saying, I love the fact that that app is available. It's just the kind of thing that it's that tiny little niggle, but I'm sure it's making everybody's life so much better. Daniel, of course, has been silenced because we've heard enough from Daniel.
Yeah, I was just muted because of my coughing. No, I was just saying to myself then, when I had my microphone muted, that I love with Swift Playgrounds now how easy it is just to publish some of those little apps just to your own machine and share them with people. I had a teacher here who needed just a timer with multiple timers for kids doing different things at different times. I was able to develop something in like 10 minutes and publish it and airdrop it to them, and now he uses it daily. So yeah, I love that message, Jia Chen, that you can just just put something together quickly. And I think there's also something there to say that you only need one successful app idea, right? Like the audience within the App Store, you're moving away from the competition now, thinking more about entrepreneurship. You only need one good idea, and that one good idea could be the thing that puts you through college, or the thing that pays off your parents' house, or whatever it is. So yeah, just start building stuff, start creating stuff, and it's even easier now with AI. So as we go through this, I mean, I was reflecting on Jia Chen. I've seen him present a lot of time. I think that the hype is pretty justified, but that's up to you. But just how the story has developed, and I think that's what's important here is what we're trying to do is develop your stories. Whether you're applying to a university, or you're going for a job interview, or you're trying to get a boyfriend or a girlfriend, your story is very important. It's what makes you interesting. It's what really draws people within you. So what we're trying to do here is to build out your story. So when you're working within design thinking, we do this exercise called empathy mapping, where we think about, what do you hear, what do you do, what do you feel, etc. So I think that's a good place to think about, like, what do you actually care about? And I know if your teachers sat down with you, if you had a tutor group or a pastoral care group or something like that, and we all sat down in a circle and we said, what do you really care about? You'd probably roll your eyes as a 16-year-old teenager and not respond very positively. But if you actually sat down and reflected what you actually care about, what you actually want to do, perhaps do it with a friend, or maybe with your girlfriend or your boyfriend, sit down with them and actually talk to them about what you care about, what you actually want in the future, what you'd like the future to look like, and perhaps what some of the problems are you're struggling with. Perhaps it is managing your time for assessments. Perhaps it is presenting and you need something to control or lock your Mac, or one of those little apps which Jia Chen created. But then from there we can start to really define your problem. I'm a big fan of Simon Sinek. Again, he's another place that you can look up some resources. He was on the circuit for a while across Google and Microsoft and Apple, presenting his story in his book about starting with why. And his big thing is talking about, we know what we want to create, right? We know how to do it sometimes. We know, we can Google things, and we can find tutorials. We can go to Hacking with Swift and look at Paul Hudson's materials and find a tutorial that's probably close to what we want to create. But that why is why people actually build in. Why do people choose Uber over Lyft? Why do people choose to buy an iPhone? Right? Why do we choose to go to certain schools or study certain subjects? And really what it is, it comes down to your personality. It comes to your upbringing, your cultural identity, things that impact you. So that's really something you need to start to hone into, not only for this competition, but for your own life, as I mentioned, to share your own story, is that essence of why, and that clarity about how we build out our story. Once you know why, then it's that simple design process. We need to brainstorm, we need to plan, we need to prototype, we need to evaluate. So long gone are the times when Mr. Abella and I were in university, and we had these long drawn out project management methodologies full of documentation. We're now living in an agile world where, as Jia Chen just mentioned, you can sit down in front of Xcode with a blank class written up, put in a few comments, and that can be your plan. All right, I'm going to try and connect my phone to my laptop, or connect my watch to my laptop. Okay, let's get the Bluetooth connectivity happening. Plan it, prototype it, build it, test it. Okay, what's next? Use that agile methodology. You don't need to document everything. This isn't a school assignment, but you need to have a plan and you need to work through that process. You can't just write all the code and try and run it once the night before you submit. You need to actually test this and go through a design process, because buggy projects won't be sufficient. As you're starting to develop your ideas, you can also look at other methodologies of how you can extend the functionality. So this Scamper methodology is something we use within our courses here at Hong Kong International School. There's other different sort of acronyms you can use, but essentially what we're looking to do is to improve the product that we've created. So SCAMP stands for substitute, combine, adapt, modify, define the purpose, eliminate, and also reverse. So I'm going to run through this within a little app idea. So let's say I had this little app here. So I've got essentially like a to-do list, right? So from this simple functionality, what could be substituted? Perhaps I want to include an input for speech. What could I combine? Well, I could include the dictation and the speech into the input. That would be increasing the functionality of my application. How could I adapt this? Well, perhaps I could pull in data from my calendar to populate some of the tasks. So I'm not manually inputting each of my tasks within my to-do list. I can look at my calendar for the day. It could pull in each of the tasks. And now I've got an integration with some sort of AI. So I'm starting to adapt new technology into my application. How could this be modified? Well, currently, I don't have a navigation view. I could use a tab view, so I could have different sections within my application. I could look at other applications which have similar functionality and look at how I can modify my application to improve the user interface, but also the functionality for that application. For P, what is the purpose? Perhaps we could develop some sort of story prompts. This is one of Mr. Rubella's.
I thought that was familiar.
the Magic 8 Ball, where we have students developing essentially one of those Magic 8 Balls that you shake and it comes up with different responses. And then we could also eliminate things as well. So once we're building our applications, it's also important to figure out, am I just adding things for the sake of adding things, or do I need to actually remove things as well? So that's a little example of how we can review our applications through the design process and think about how we could improve them, what things we could add, especially from the perspective of accessibility, inclusivity, making sure that we are inclusive of the users. Apple has some fantastic guidelines on human user interface design, designing with humans in mind, designing with the end user in mind, and making sure that everyone can use the application. A lot of these things are baked in, so it's not a difficult ad for you to spend.
I was just gonna. Oh dear.
Yeah, go for it.
I was just going to say, Daniel, one of the things that I like and I don't like about Swift UI is that it really encourages you to work in a certain way. But the real benefit and the reason that Apple do this is because they want every app to be intuitive and work in a similar way. So if you are working with Swift UI rather than trying to fight Swift UI in terms of the interface, you're probably helping yourself. And in a short competition, you're really helping yourself.
Yeah, definitely. And it's the same reason that I can give, my 5-year-old daughter an iPad and she can navigate her way around the App Store and Roblox and all these sort of complicated things, is because it's an intuitive interface with common interface guidelines that move across the different applications. So she knows where the exit button is. She knows where the chat function is. She knows how to bring up the keyboard, because all the icons look similar across the application. So we're not looking to change the world in that sense. We're just trying to make sure that people are able to use their applications. Oh, sorry, I forgot the last part. To reverse. So we need to make sure that we could, in fact, change the pattern, the layout, the order. Perhaps we don't have the prompts as the first landing page. We need to think about the way that people interact with that application. Why I love developing for iPad in particular is all the sensors that we have available. So this is a little playground which is available within Swift Playgrounds, a seismometer. We're essentially looking at earthquakes, right? So within the iPad, we have LiDAR sensors, we have cameras, microphones, ambient light sensors, magnetic connectors, etc. These are all things that can be used in unique ways. So we can use the camera as a light sensor. We can use the LiDAR sensor to scan spaces. It's not just about portrait photos. We can scan the space. We can create different maps. Microphones can be used in unique ways for games. Perhaps you want to make your an application which encourages, I don't know, learning directions within a different language. And then we want to say, turn right, turn left, using a different language, Cantonese or something, was it Jinyao, Jinjiao, to turn left, turn right. And that way people are practicing the language, but also through a game sense, right? So we could use different input methods in different ways and try and be a little bit unique about how we use the different sensors that are available to us. And this is also a fun way that we can use different types of data. So you can see here from the gyro that's built into the application, we can see we're graphing that data through the application there. So we have a broad amount of data and sensors that we can use. So as we're starting to build in the cool factor into your application, this is something you consider. So the basics would be, your keyboard, your camera, your touch screen, perhaps photos. We need to make sure that it's connected. So we'll have Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, GPS. Then you can start to get a little bit more innovative. Perhaps you're using machine learning for speech recognition. Perhaps you're using some of those movement sensors or augmented reality with the LiDAR sensor. And then, of course, as I mentioned, making sure that you're inclusive with your application that you build as well. So having voiceovers, having text size increasing, all those sort of things. You don't want to make static. You want to make sure that people can actually explore the app as intended. So our final presenters today are Samion and Rexon. They're my students here, and they're going to share a little bit about their projects. These presentations will be a little bit shorter. This is more around some cool ideas that you can play with. So I'm going to speak too much and ruin their presentations, but I'll leave it over to you, Samion. I think Rexon's going first, actually. Sorry, Rexon.
All right. Hey guys, my name is Rexon, and I'm currently 16 years old. I'm a junior at Hong Kong International School. So around 2 years ago, I didn't know how to code, but I had a passion for coding because I wanted to build like applications. I want to build the apps that I see every day on my phone. I want to build like websites that I see every day on my computer or on Safari. And I just had this passion for coding. So because I had this passion for coding, I signed up for one of Mr. Bott's coding classes. And from there onwards, my love for coding just kept growing and growing. And I felt more passionate about building applications and building websites and building stuff. And this got to the point where in 2022, I applied for the Apple Swift Student Challenge. And I built an app where it basically takes a picture of like your room, and it uses like AR. So you can imagine like putting chairs in your room, putting like different furniture items in your room and stuff like that. And this app I submitted to the Apple Swift Student Challenge in 2022. But unfortunately, Apple rejected the app. And just like as Jesaiah said, and as Jia Chen said, failure is part of like coding, failure is part of like the building process. And I took this opportunity as a learning opportunity. And then there onwards, I sharpened up my coding skills a lot. I watched a lot of YouTube tutorials, like some of them were like 7 hours long. During the summer, I kept practicing my coding. I kept building stuff. And I mainly built stuff around like blockchain applications and websites, building blockchain applications to sharpen up my coding. And eventually, it came 2023 for Apple's Swift Student Challenge. And I remember this was a pretty long time since I touched Swift and Apple iOS applications in general. But because of my passion and my commitment to getting better and keeping my skill in coding, try to always get better, try to always learn and stuff, I tried to pick up a lot of stuff from Swift that I learned from previous years, and also my coding knowledge that I learned over the months. And eventually I made this app, which you guys see on the screen right now. And it's basically a very simple app where it generates a random word, and then what you have to do is that you need to scroll through your photo album to find out a photo that matches that word. And then it runs some kind of machine learning algorithm in the background that makes sure that the photo that you selected matches the word that has been randomly generated. So it's a really simple app idea, but the reason why I chose this app idea was because that time I just wanted to build something that people can have fun. And I realized that there's not many like apps that integrate with like photo albums and stuff like that. I was scrolling through like my photos briefly, and then scrolling through photos really gives me like a lot of memories about the past and stuff like that. So I was like, why not build an app that like allows you to do that but in a fun way? So this is how I got the idea for Photo Rush. And from there onwards, I got the notification from going to school on the car to school, and I opened the Apple notification, and I was shocked to see that I got accepted as a scholar. And from there onwards, my love for coding kept increasing, and I try my best to keep learning more about coding and building things quickly, and it's got me into now. So my message for you guys is just never give up, just keep building things fast and keep learning. So yeah, thank you very much for having me here, and I'll pass it over to Samion.
Thanks very much, Rexon.
All right, so my project was a sort of interactive learning experience into cellular automata, which is this concept I was just like really fascinated by one day. So I decided to create a whole app around it. So essentially what I did was I used Swift UI, a sprite kit, and core graphics. And essentially this was able to make my whole project, which was really easily integratable, and it was really easy to sort of understand and lay out, which in contrast to the rest of my messy code was a really nice feature that Apple gave me. So I think what was most important about my project was how passionate I was about it. I was like really, really into this idea of cellular automata. So I try to explore it as much as possible within the app. So here you can see one-dimensional cellular automata, an elementary cellular automata. And so what it is just a set of rules that can generate complex patterns just from simple states. And here's Sierpinski's triangle, two overlapping ones. And then I did 2D cellular automata with Conway's Game of Life, which is a super famous example of cellular automata. And I just showcased like the different patterns around it. But essentially what was another thing that was like really interesting about it was, I think, the applications of cellular automata, which I get to here. And the application of cellular automata can like range from, as you'll see, forest fire simulations to like gauge generation algorithms. And that, I think, like really inspired me to create this project like fully, because to showcase this power of cellular automata to a larger audience, to some people who have no clue what cellular automata is, that's what I really wanted to convey here. And I hope I did a good job in conveying it through this project. But again, everything here was just made using Swift UI and Sprite Kit and core graphics. And I was able to like integrate all these technologies really nicely because of how Apple's Swift works. And yeah, so that's how I made my application.
Well done, excellent, great job there. And I think that's an area that we could do with some teaching, because it's hard to make these really interactive scenarios. So did you release it to the App Store? Are you thinking about doing that or sharing it?
In honesty, it's a bit prone to crashing, so I'll have to work on it before I actually release it. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's some it looks simple, but I reckon there's some complex things going on behind, isn't it?
I guess you could say that, but Apple's really streamlined the process for me to really create this app, which I really appreciate about Swift.
Yeah, yeah. And I think Swift UI probably helped a bit as well. The
It
sprite
helped a
kit
lot,
is
yeah.
sprite kit is very handy once you get into it. Brilliant. Right, back to Mr. Budd.
Thanks very much, guys. So I'm going to have some chances for some questions. I know I've got some questions about what Samion's experience was actually like over in Silicon Valley. So we'll get to those eventually as well. But I want to cover briefly about what the next steps are for you. So today you've had an introduction to what the Swift Challenge actually is and what you need to create. You know what the deadlines are. You know where the website is for you to actually sign up and apply. The next step is for you to do some brainstorming. So you could do this either within your school group, but also do it on your own. Think of some ideas. Sometimes ideas come to you, as Rexon was kind of saying. He was just in a car one day and sort of thought of this idea of something he wanted to create. Or Jia Chen just sort of came to these ideas when he's doing his presentations and needed a presentation clicker. Or Jesaiah when he was out busking. So it's not necessarily when you sit down formally with a blank piece of paper and think, okay, 10 ideas, let's go. But now you've had this presentation, it's going to be in the back of your mind thinking about what things actually impact you and what ideas you might want to write down. And then you just need to start actually to plan and build some things, to start to prototype and put some things together. You may not be successful in the first year. Many people are not successful in the first year, but it's about that process of actually building things. Perhaps it may not get accepted by the Swift Challenge, but perhaps it's a fantastic application that really impacts people within your region that the judges don't quite understand, but it's something you can publish to the App Store. So this is about getting you started. This is talking about you building your first app that's just for you. You're not building the magic 8-ball, application because Mr. Abella told you to build it, and that's the course and that's the project you need to build. This is something you care about, something that you want to build. Maybe it's for your little brother or sister. Maybe it's for your parents. Maybe it's for your teacher who keeps forgetting when the assignments are due. But it's something that you're going to build that matters and impacts your world. So that's what the brainstorming is about, starting to figure out these ideas so that you're ready for your submission. So our estimate guess is that 3 weeks from the start of February is around the 22nd of February. That's our approximate date for submission, which means that your project will be ready to go, vetted by your peers, vetted by your teacher by the 21st of February. So if you write that down as your date, and then you need to work backwards to think about all the time you can actually fit in to build this project. It may come quickly, it may come very slowly. So you need to start to plan accordingly and think about when you're going to be finding time in order to build this out.
I mean, luckily, the good news, Josiah, is that we're ahead of the US. So it probably buys us time rather than takes away.
Yes, yeah, it gives us a little bit of time. Now I'm not going to play through this whole video, but we have made some videos available for you, which will help you in the creation of the Swift Playground app package, ready for the Swift Student Challenge. So reminding you that we need to have that .swiftpm file. So there's 2 videos available. There's the first one, which is within macOS. So this one will step you through exactly how you create that app file, which is pretty easy because you just click the app button on the bottom left, and that is the app package that you need to have. And then from there, we can go into the Files app, find that Playgrounds file, and then start to actually create that. So again, I'm not going to run through this whole thing. We've made some YouTube videos for that, and they'll be available for you within the Padlet, which I believe James has now posted and is available for everyone. So that's video number 1. If you still have your MacBook, that's perfectly fine. You can prototype and build on your MacBook. You don't need to buy a separate device ready for this competition. We can also, when we create a new file, as long as you select that iOS button next to the multi-platform on the top left. See if I can see. There we go. So just here, this little iOS button, you'll have this available that says Swift Playground app, and that will allow you to create that exact same Swift Playgrounds app package that they do on the iPad. Very easy to airdrop back and forth if you want to do any testing.
I mean, I would recommend doing some testing in Playgrounds because then you're absolutely sure. But if you're already comfortable in Xcode, feel free to use it.
Yes, 100%. Always need to test it. Make sure you test it with the end user. Make sure you test it on different devices. There used to be when I used to work as a developer, web development used to be our thing where we'd say, but it works on my machine. Just because it works on your machine doesn't mean it works on everyone else's. So we're going to have an opportunity now for a panel discussion. We've still got our presenters here with us, as well as myself and James Abella as well. So if you have any questions about the experience, about any of the presentations, about the time, blood, sweat, and tears that went into these projects, we'll be able to vet your questions. We can sort of MC this a little bit for you and make sure that your questions get surfaced. So
we've had the first question out already about on the iPad it crashing a lot, and the honest answer is the older iPads really struggle to run it, and Swift does crash quite often on these older iPads. So I think you just have to accept that it is going to freeze, it is going to cause problems. But the actual app development part of it, I found to be much more reliable than some of the lessons, because they have a lot of animation and stuff. So perhaps it's a way to keep them simple. Found another question. Yes, we are designing for iPad screens because I know the judges will be testing using iPads largely, but don't worry about it too much because iPad, Mac, not too much difference. But the intention is to have these showcased on iPads without any internet in WWDC. So that is the intention. So in your head, think it's going to be on an iPad without any internet.
I also had a question there about the slides as well. Slides at the end. We've recorded this presentation. I'm going to re-record the start bit where I was coughing a little bit, but I'll publish that and present a link, and I'll email it to everyone very shortly.
If you have only a Mac, if you are using Swift Playgrounds, that will be fine. And I have tested loads of little apps, and they've crossed over from iPad to Mac, so I wouldn't worry about it at all. If you can get another user to test for you on an iPad, great. But if you run it on Playgrounds on a Mac, you'll be absolutely fine. I would not recommend making a Mac standalone application. You definitely can't use on an iPad, but nearly everything on Swift Playgrounds on the Mac runs across both things, unless you start using special commands that say Mac only, and at that point I would say don't do it. Jia Chen, that Mac Catalyst bit, don't be using that. So that's the key thing, is try to keep it to the separate stuff. Don't have a Mac, iPhone, iPad. I'm sorry, it is an Apple competition. So if you do not have an iPad or you do not have a Mac device and you cannot borrow one, then that really is the limitation.
It's very, very difficult for that one. We just had a question from Ryan about using external libraries. You can certainly use external libraries. That's encouraged. It's perfectly fine. It's just whether the external libraries access the internet. So when you embed an external library, it actually brings it into your project. So there's no problem with using that.
Yeah, because one of the nice things about Swift is it's designed to be fully standalone. So when you import that library, it's then inside your program. But please be sure to acknowledge that you've used a library, okay? That's something you should put in your comments, because you don't want plagiarism, and then that's not going to look good on you.
Yeah, you saw that at the end of Samion's project as well, where he had his references nicely listed as a part of that. Do you have any questions for the panel as well? Anything about the experience?
I just had one more question, because a lot of these are coming in directly to me. So
no problem.
Supposed to submit. It is just going to be the app Playground and the documentation to go with it. So there is a form to go with it. And what I suggest you do is when it opens, have a look at it before you get seriously into your app, so you know exactly what you want to do. But basically, you're going to be asked a few questions, plus you're going to submit the Playground app. 25 megabytes of files. I would say the coding is very, very tiny, but your media files are the things that will quickly gobble up space. So each file, normally the lines of code, I'm looking at 25, 50K, maybe 100K. Well, if it's 100K, you're going to get an awful lot of those in your 25 megabytes. So I wouldn't say it'll be the lines of code, but it will be any images that come with it that will gobble up the space. So images are the things that will take megabytes. So one image is 2 megabytes. That's an awful lot of script. I will be honest, I don't think I've heard any student of mine do more than 1 megabyte of actual code. I'm just trying to make the maths easy there. However, those of you doing the GCSE computer science, I'm sure you could do this without a calculator. So yeah. Yeah, Jia Chen, excellent point. Use this opportunity to share the code around, yeah? When it gets to the testing part of things, surely you've got friends with an iPad and Mac. Get it tested on as many devices as possible. But generally speaking, they'll be testing it on the latest version of Swift. So that is the best way. And, you know, we're here to help. Oh, 3D model. Whoa. 2D models are, yeah, definitely. 3D models are going to be a kiddle unless you're going to use very lo-fi models indeed. So, but also it's about a nice, clean, simple project, really. We all get excited, but some of the projects I've seen have been simple, beautiful, elegant things and not had too much in them, but they've told a story and they've been useful. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think if you look up Yuma on YouTube as well, he's done a lot of tutorials around 3D models and also has really good examples of simple 3D graphics as well that could be beneficial for a lot of people. I'll make sure I put his YouTube channel into the Padlet as well.
Yeah. There we go. Yeah, and I do think 3D models, you can keep them simple and maybe think AR rather than VR, because VR is definitely going to immediately gobble a lot of your space, whereas AR, a few very well chosen simple models could be very effective if you're going down that route. And also, I will stress, there are projects that have had none of these features, the projects that have had all sorts of features, all have won because you've had a story, you've got a purpose, and you've thought of a user and how you can make their life better.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. There's been people who have put in a lot of hours 1 year and failed, and then what they thought was less next time.
I've just had a message. I'll be honest, it's iPad, it's Mac. Of course, you can type code on a Windows machine, but it's not going to be testable. So I'll be honest.
Yeah.
Nick somebody's iPad.
Yeah, and also with the Swift app package, it's going to be more difficult if you.
Yeah. Jesaiah.
Yeah. Hi. I just got a question in chat. I'm not sure if you guys saw it. It's the direct message. So I'll just read it out and then I'll give Jia Chen and myself a chance to answer it. So the question was, to both winners, how do you balance your academic, personal, and professional goals and interests? How do you manage your time and prioritize your tasks? Jai, would you like to go first and I'll go second?
Yeah, sure. So for me it's a bit challenging because on top of just like for example just school, I still run the Swift Accelerator program and all of that. So there's a lot of stuff going on. Usually my calendar is very, very packed. I'm kind of thankful that Daniel reached out to me like a couple months back because my week is very chaotic. I would say that you have to find a way to manage it because it's just a series of trade-offs. So sometimes you might have to sacrifice a bit of time on certain assignments to spend a bit more time on other stuff, that kind of thing. Yeah,
and also that's part of the reason they've done it for 3 weeks, right? During those 3 weeks, it's going to be pretty intense. We're also kind of hoping that some of you will have a week, 2 weeks holiday and not have, I mean, if you have exams during February, we understand you wouldn't do it, but also think about this as an opportunity. If you don't have the time this year, you have the opportunity to learn about the competition, so you're ready to go next year.
Josiah, did you want to share your response?
Yeah, sure. I'll just quickly touch on the organizational part first. Like when you've got a whole project in front of you and you just have all these ideas coming out of your brain, once you've thought of an idea, all these different features, I like to throw them in this new thing called GitHub projects, and it lets me make almost a roadmap. So I can assign a certain amount of time for a feature and then another feature, and I can see myself going along this roadmap. And it really simplifies out the process, because instead of having all these things all at once at you, you just have one thing to focus on at a time. So that's GitHub projects. I find that really useful. And then I do spend a lot of time coding, but I really make sure to go outside and spend time with my friends, because that's when the best ideas are formed. Like when I was out busking with my friends, that's how I had the idea for this app. And it's the same even if you have a really tricky bug. I always try and go outside and just distract myself, because it almost frees up something where I'm thinking about it, but in the back of my head, and it opens up a new perspective. So making sure you have balance is actually really good for your submission and making sure you're being productive. Yeah.
And you know, some ideas take huge amounts of hours and some ideas take less. And I have seen tremendous variety in terms of that, in terms of past winners. So please think about it carefully, but also say to yourself, you know, is this something that is going to be an amazing app? And yes, it would be great to go to San Francisco, but if you've made an app that's going to help people, I think, okay, it's a bit cheesy, but let's be honest, that is the reward for itself. You know, I've made apps that I know are helping people, and I'm not getting money or anything out of it, but it's enough for me that it's helping people.
I mean, another thing is, okay, since most of you, I think all of you are students, an app is actually really, really good on your portfolio for like whatever you're applying to next. Just the fact that you have an app, and even better if you publish it onto the App Store, it looks really nice on your portfolio that you have an actual app and you've built something.
Yeah. One of our teachers shared that they did approach the local Apple stores and stuff, and they were willing to cooperate and help and give them time. And it's amazing how when they hear about these projects, how they can be willing to help. Josiah, is your hand up again?
Yeah. I just wanted to also touch on a few things that weren't as relevant when I was talking about my story before, but I think will be really useful for anyone who's planning to enter the challenge this year. So I'll quickly send a list in chat of all the new APIs and technologies, not all of them, but just a few that I think will be interesting, that you should definitely have a good think about using in your submissions this year, because they've all come out really recently, and Apple love when you show that you're adapting and using their new tools. Like Tip Kit will be super useful if you want to talk the judges through your app as they explore it, and Swift Data as well. And on top of that, accessibility is really important, and Apple thinks it's really important too. So
one thing I will say is the format you're going to give it in, they're going to see the source code.
Pardon?
The format that you're going to give it in as an app, Apple will see the source code. So that is important, that it is nice and clean, like Josiah is suggesting.
Yeah, they do read your code as well. And that brings me on to the next point. After you finish adding all the accessibility features, make sure you kind of document your code. So if you haven't heard about documentation, I sent a link in chat there. But it's just basically walking through anyone who reads your code, what this certain thing does, and why that's important. So take a look at that. I tried to document as much as my code as I could for my submission, because I really want to make sure the judges have a grasp of the thought process I've gone through when I coded it, and then also what each class and structure does. So yeah.
Fantastic. We are aware of your time. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time. Obviously, we are available on the usual networks and stuff. I don't know what the easiest way to get in front of you, and we're still trying to think of a better way than what was known as Twitter. I am at ESL Web, and Dan is also available there. So please do reach out to us as teachers, teacher to teacher. And we've also shared the Discord, which I know that the students are talking to each other on. as teachers, we're not allowed on Discord for these kinds of things, but we are happy to communicate in a public place like Twitter if you have those kind of questions. If any of you are in and around Kuala Lumpur, we may have a bit of a brainstorming session in KL. I'm sure Mr. Bud probably is planning something in Hong Kong. And if you are much further afield, do reach out to your community and talk to each other. And do please use the meeting chat. Yes, there's the Discord again. Brilliant. Thank you. So thank you so much for your time. Best of luck, everyone. I am sure you're going to come up with some amazing ideas, and I look forward to seeing what everybody comes. And if you win and you were on this talk, me and Mr. Bird want to hear about it. We want to know that we got some more winners, because well, let's be honest, the winners are on this chat. We just don't know who they are yet.
Definitely. We had a good community from last time. We're trying to build up more. We want to hear your stories, share your stories, and help build your careers as well. Now we've got the internet, we can break down those borders geographically and build a really tight community of like-minded people. So thanks very much for your time. I'm going to try and get the recording out. So if some of you came in a little bit late, I'm going to try and get this recording out to you this week, so that everyone can have access to it. If any of your friends, colleagues didn't make it, we can share that recording with them also. But I will send that shortly through email for you all.
All the best. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.